Hello again, this is Grayve, and this is the third tutorial in the Killing Floor Mapping Essentials. And the Essentials is pretty much going to be a series all about the main kind of concepts of the editor, just kind of go in an order of what seems to be the most sought after, learn along the way kind of stuff, building up into the more critical, extra curricular kind of stuff, you know. So it starts with how to just the introduction to the editor, then it goes into the how to make a basic map, and then this tutorial, which will be GPU optimization, and then the ones after that, which will get more into decorations and meshes and more into the advanced stuff of mapping. So just flying through different concepts. So this concept is optimization. So optimization is basically just making it so that whatever's on your screen is pretty much trying to is essentially the only thing that you want to be rendering. So the stuff that you're not actually looking at, or that's maybe in your line of sight but hidden behind a wall or out of view, you know, it's technically in your line of sight but it's being obstructed by something else. You might want to find a way to de-render those objects so that you save frame rates, basically, so it runs better. And so we're just going to use a basic template map here for that. I was going to use the other map from the other tutorial, but since it's just a giant cylinder with staircases, I figured it probably wouldn't be the best idea. Need something with hallways to demonstrate it better, so you know, you get a really good concept of how it works. So I'm just going to do a number of hallways in here. Do like 300 by... Holy shit, that's loud. Turn my volume down. Okay. Some music going. This playlist is all mixed up. But yeah, if you're wondering if that thing is on my camera, that's my microphone. I'm just put a pillowcase over it because my pop filter is on the other stand, and if I'm talking right into here, I didn't want pops in it. Alright. So yeah. It's gonna be 300 by, I guess, 500 by like 1,000 or something. Sure, so make that like 400. There we go. And then we'll just subtract that and move one out. Maybe make it a little bit further down. Subtract that one out. Rotate 90 degrees up here. Just kind of like intersected in both of them, I guess. Alright, so we got some hallways going on here. Let's get some texture set up on this so it doesn't look like total ass. Do Control or Shift W for walls. Sure. Shift F for floors. That might be interesting. Sure, I don't care. Alright, and we'll do the basic stuff so it can be playable. Put player starts in it. Gonna need some AI navigation, so hurry and throw in some path nodes. Because to test this out, we're gonna want to have zombies moving around, Zeds moving around, so we can see how they de-render as they move along. Just need one player start. Build pass. There we go. And then we need some lights. So build lighting just to get the first look. And then just do some kind of I don't know. I don't like the most boring lights ever. You fucking kidding me? I set lighting to the brush. Alright. see. Sure, that's okay. Alright, so now we got some kind of appearance, something going on. I didn't want to use boring white light, so I just did that. Textures and everything okay, it's just a test. So basically, let's say you're over here at the player's start. You can see that from here in your line of sight you can't see anything on your screen past this wall or down the hallway. But as far as the computer goes and the renderer, your graphics card in the game, it doesn't have that. It's going to render everything that's pretty much around there. Now the brush will automatically, to some extent, be able to know what to pull out and what not, but it depends on if you have any zoning, and that's what we're going to get into. So let's go ahead and save this out ahead of time in case it crashes or some shit. We're going to have to test it in game anyway. So let's call this optimization test or something. It's like that. So now I'm going to show you a number of ways that you can do optimization. So a very common one is called culling, and it's pretty much just I guess culling's more of a concept in general that is more or less what optimization is doing. So to be more specific, I guess it's draw distance, I guess we'll call it that, or cull distance. So let's say you have those are terrible examples, by the way. Let's get something more practical. Okay, this fucking gnome. Let's put this gnome in, make him somewhat big so it's an obvious change. Let's say you have this gnome in here, and at a certain amount of distance away, you don't want it to render just to save frame rate. It's something that might not be noticeable, just decorative on the map, and you just want it to disable and pretty much hide after a certain distance. So you go to the properties of this static mesh, and you go to display. A lot of different characteristics of appearance and stuff will be under the display tab on most objects. You go to the cull distance, and you just set that to the amount of units that you want to where you have to be away from it before it disappears. So maybe we want it at 2,000 units. So it'd be pretty much almost where we were. And once you get 2,000 units away from it, it disappears. So that's a common one. You'll see that in a lot of official maps that have a lot of outdoor areas that are very big, like Hillbilly, possibly Wire, and some other maps. The terrain decorative layers on the terrain, like grass and trees and stuff, they'll do that automatically. If you have that set, you can set that with some kind of a radius fade in and fade out on your decoration layers. And I'll get into that when we do the terrain tutorial. It won't be part of the essentials, but it'll be a side tutorial, like a miscellaneous tutorial in a different series with a bunch of other stuff, but in that series as well. But if you want to do individual objects, that's how you go about doing it. If it was on a terrain layer, you can have it fade out and fade in, so it's less obvious. You know, it doesn't just disappear like 0 to 1. It has more of a grayscale blend. But this is how you do it if it's just an individual object that's not placed on the terrain. So aside from that, then you got I'm gonna save the hardest one for last. The second one is called anti-portals, and anti-portals are volumetric, so you just build those using your basic brush builder, just like you do rooms, or trader volumes, or Z volumes, or anything like that. They're volumetric. They work really similar in concept, I think, to blocking volume would be a very similar concept. You know, placing a volume around something to prevent players from going in that area, you know, setting your bounds of your map or whatever. It's kind of like that as far as the placement goes, but instead of it being used as setting bounds for your map, it's more or less you're placing it in areas where if a player was standing here, you want to use this volume to obstruct their point of view to the rest of the map as much as possible in areas that you can efficiently place it in. So you're really maximizing and utilizing this open space that you have between these two hallways to use this volume, place it in there, and this volume, once it becomes an anti-volume, once you create an anti-volume from this, it can obstruct the rendering. It completely shuts off anything that's on the other side of this from their point of view. So as you look through this volume, nothing on the other side, for the most part, it depends on if it's full objects or not, will be rendered. So it just obstructs rendering if you're looking through this object, through this volume. And so you want to tuck that away into the walls and stuff. One of the limits is that, though, you have to have your anti-volume placed inside the same zone as where you are. So if I had this completely, entirely in blackness outside of here, that's not inside any of these brushes, and therefore the anti-volume won't actually work. So you'd have to pop it out of the wall just a little bit, but not enough to cause any glitches. And speaking of glitches, I fucking hate that. Speaking of glitches, if you put anti-volumes inside of livable areas you can walk through and pass through and stuff like that, like if I put it right inside intersecting this hallway, as you pass through that, your whole screen will just turn black as you pass through it, because it's de-rendering everything on your screen if you're standing inside of it. If you're not standing inside of it and I just put it through here, it would look like some weird glitch where things on the other side of this hallway would just be de-rendering and disappearing, and it looks very trippy. So it's you don't want to have that show at all, because it just makes you think the game's broken or your video card's overheating or something. It just has like a weird glitchy effect to it. So make sure it's popping out of the wall a little bit, because if I don't, it's going to be completely contained in this black space, and that therefore it won't actually work. And but don't pop it inside your hallway enough that it's actually going to mess anything up. So we can yeah, let's actually maximize the space. Like I said, you want to utilize as much of the space as possible. So if the hall starts here, this one starts there, I think a good old big square filling this black space here would be really optimal. So let's do 1,000 by 1,000. That seems good. And then just place that in here. Pop it through a little bit, coming out of one of the walls. It doesn't have to be much at all, just one unit's enough. Like that, just one little unit. So that should be pretty decent there. And then to actually build the anti-portal, it's down here on your next to your builders, like your add, subtract modes and all that. It's next to your mover and your volume, and it just says add anti-portal. So you click the add anti-portal button. You can hide your active brush with B, and you'll see this orange volume there. And that will hide with O, like your blocking volumes and other volume types hide with that hotkey. So you can hide those if they get in the way. And you can see it happen in real time. That's what I love about the anti-portals. So you can see the gnome and stuff in that room over there, those brushes and things start to disappear as we move the camera behind that place volume. That volume obstructs it, and as it obstructs, it is de-rendering what's on the other side of your point of view. So it's pretty fucking genius. My good friend Frank. Alright, so hardest one, saving for last here. So actually I'm going to show you what happens if you don't have this coming through your into livable space. If I had it out here, so now you can see it's completely invisible while I'm inside this hall. If I move out into the black space, it shows up, but if I'm in this room, it doesn't show up, and if it doesn't show up, that means it's not going to render. So now if I go behind the wall, it looks like it's working. It does, but if you playtest it in the actual game, it will have different properties than that. The editor lies, and it shows that it's rendering, but it's not. So all you need is just for it to intersect, touch it in some way, and actually come out. So like I had it before, it was actually really good. Just right there. And that won't be enough units coming out to where your camera or your collision or any of that is going to be able to cause any glitches. You're not going to be able to fit your head in that little teeny 1 unit space between that and the wall. So it's not going to obstruct anything. And most likely you're not going to have any objects along this wall that are going to perfectly fit behind that 1 unit space either. Not unless it was like some kind of like graffiti static mesh or something, but even so, you'd probably pull that off about the same amount of units away from the wall as the anti-portal's coming through. So even then, it should be okay. Alright, so the last one is called zone portals, or yeah, zone portals, zoning. So zoning is basically like segregating your map into different pieces, and as you move into the different pieces of your map, the other pieces, depending on if they're in your line of sight, become cold or de-rendered. And it's very practical for if you didn't want to place anti-portals everywhere in all these black spaces, because it's said that having too many anti-portals actually causes lag. And even if it didn't, even if that wasn't the case and it did save you a lot of frames, it's just really tedious placing a bunch of well-placed volumes all over your map in all these open spaces. So it's really good for, it's kind of the opposite idea. So instead of placing it in obstructions, all you're really doing is inserting sheets at critical points in your map. Like in the hallway here, I can add a sheet going this way. Maybe over here I can add a sheet going this way, or even going this way, really. Cut off this hall going that way. And then as I'm standing in these hallways here, around the corner will be pretty much de-rendered, and of course into this zone as well. So it's really great for just cutting your map into segments like that, and the ones that aren't being in your line of sight, anything in that zone, those other zones will de-render and save you a lot of frames. Perfect for indoor maps. Anti-portals are more practical for trying to save frames on outdoor maps. So it just kind of depends. You can do a combination of the two. If you're really into optimization, you get really deep into it. It could save you a shit ton of frames, but for the most part, zone portals is all you really need for indoor maps like this, like hallways and such, like Bedlam, Biotics Lab, a lot of maps like that. So to do that, you basically just need to create a sheet from this basic builder group section over here. Just create a sheet, right click on it, just kind of estimate. You want to find out the units. I know that my hallway is like 400 by like 300 high, so I think it's 450. Let's make it a little bit taller just to make sure I got plenty of room to fit this in. There are some rules that this has to work around too. So now that we built that, make sure to bring your active brush back. You got to change the axis so it's standing up, and let's do a y-axis. So there we go. And just drag that over and kind of fit that in as close as you can, just to really optimize the space on this. Get as close as you can before it actually is pretty much almost popping out of the wall. The rules with placing the sort of gateways or sheets that start the different zones, where the zones begin, how they separate, they have to be completely encasing any open space into that zone. So if I had windows or anything like that in a house and I was trying to zone off a house, I would have to do all the windows and everything with sheets too. You can't have any open areas that are leaking. Think of it like water, and you have to patch up all the holes. So if there's any open spaces, the water's going to flood and get into the other zones, get into the other areas. So you got to completely patch it up. You can have excess coming into the black, you know, making it bigger than what you need, but just don't make it smaller. That's pretty much it. So that's perfectly set, I think. You can totally tell. I don't really need to size that up in the orthogonal. It looks pretty good. So the next thing you're going to do is click on Add Special Brush. It'll give you this little builder thing here, and just do the Zone Portal template, which is built just for this, but add the two-sided. I don't know why they didn't build that into it, but it just makes it so you can see the texture from both sides. It makes it better, so you can just tell where it is at all times. There is kind of an art form with the texture of the zone brush. It's kind of a practice, I think, that most mappers do. They do all zone portals the same texture, just so when they come in they know that this is going to be a zone portal and it's not something else. So pick a texture you like if you want to go with that practice texture that you want to use on all your zones, and just repeat that. So if we wanted to, we could do like the bark on all of them or something. So now we could take that, just move it out, and do the same thing over here. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you're trying to optimize as much space as possible. That looks pretty good. So do the same thing. And now if you go to your zone portal view, up at the top of your viewport, you got a zone portal mode. It actually identifies your different zones as colors. So you can see it's all blue right now, but the moment I build geometry, you can now see it's 3 different colors. So each one of these colors corresponds to a different zone. And then of course we need to build lighting, so just do a build all, I guess. And the next thing that goes hand in hand with zones is the zone info actor class. We've used this in the other tutorial to do the fog in the how to build a basic map, or how to make a working map, I think is what it's called. The tutorial before this. Zone infos need to be placed in every single zone you have. If they're not, then you'll miss out on different features like fog and terrain capabilities and stuff like that. You don't have to have one in every zone, but it depends on what you want that zone to be used for, I guess, but it's just good practice for continuity. So go ahead and get one in all these. What I should have done is built one of these for the map itself, then duplicated it, got the settings I liked, and then duplicated it to all these. So let's do that. So let's say I wanted a little bit of ambient light. I wanted it kind of greenish or something, maybe 125, and 155. How does that look? Lighting mode. 15. Just so it's not pitch black in here. And then we wanted a green fog in here. I'm just going to do some extreme fog so you can see the difference as you're walking in different zones, as you're passing through them. Like a negative 1,000. You need to go up to the zone info and turn on distant fog. Distant fog end will be like 3,000, 5,000. It's pretty fucking dense. And then we'll just take this and duplicate it, move into this next hall here, and then we'll change the fog to a different color so you can see how it works, how they affect the zones as you're passing through. So you're in this zone, pass into this one, and that fog should be turning purple, but maybe I have to build geometry first. I guess not. Oh yeah, there we go, it's working, okay. Yeah, sometimes you have to build geometry to get the fog to work after you've placed it. So you can see that I passed into this other zone, and it moves, it changes the fog. And to get the real-time preview, like I'm doing, so that you can actually see these things happening in the editor in real time, you just click this play icon up here, this controller. I don't know if I showed you that. And we'll duplicate this one, and move it around to into that hallway. Just as long as it's in that brush. And then we'll do a some kind of a red fog or some shit. Build geometry and lighting. So it's kind of like a violet magenta, becomes purple, and then green. So that's a good example of how physical things can change as you're passing in zones, if you want them to. So you can have the fog change, you can have the lighting change, and a number of other features like that. But those are pretty much the main ones. And if you're in a game that uses the zone names, you can also name the zone you're in. I can call this like hallway, corridor A or something, corridor B and C, etc. Killing Floor doesn't use the location names or anything. If it was Unreal Tournament it would, or maybe another Unreal Engine game. But there we go, so that's the 3 different ways you can optimize, and there might be some other ways on top of that, but those are the 3 main ones I know of that are most practiced. So we can go play test now. I'll show you how these work in an actual game with Zeds, and then we'll close this up. So let's go to the game. Alright, so here we are in the game, and you can see the fog color already applying to the camera. We're not even spawned in there yet. Something I forgot to do in the tutorial was putting in Z volumes. So I actually had to put the zombie volumes in. I didn't show that in the tutorial, but I just made cubes and put them at the end of the hallways. So there you can see it goes purple, and then the magenta color here. So the fog color works really well. You go to R mode 1, you can see as they're spawning, they come out of it not being rendered, and then actually come into your screen as being rendered, so you can see the point in which they're de-rendering and starting to render, which is about halfway down the hall. This is completely the zones that are doing this, the fact that we made zones. The anti-portal is placed on the other side of the hallway, so we're not actually seeing that happen here. But this is how efficient zones can happen. If you just segregate your map into zones, you get this kind of de-rendering power. So we can save a lot of frame rates as they come around out of there. Anything that's not pretty much within that hallway halfway to us and down here in this hallway will be de-rendered for the most part, and will actually have a lag or effect on the video card. So as you can see, when we go around that corner, you can kind of see how things are deconstructing, but if we were in the normal view, it wouldn't actually happen that way. The R mode 5 will put you back into your typical render mode. R mode 1 is wireframe. So that's pretty much going to be it for this tutorial, and the next tutorial we're going to get into more advanced workflow stuff like static meshes and more decorative things, just to build onto this knowledge. So yeah, that'd be it. Thanks for watching.